May 25th,
Yes.
almost Memorial Day weekend. Motion to open the meeting,
Make a motion to open meeting.
Second motion.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, for members of the audience and the greater audience of Zoom and YouTube and the web, we are being audio and videotaped, so consider that fair warning. We'd like to welcome everybody here to our meeting, and let's see. Recorded Zoom and is available for viewing by YouTube. We've got a motion to open the meeting. It's been seconded. We have a quorum tonight. The chairman is not here, Mr. Francois. If the members could introduce themselves.
Steve Boucher, member.
Dave DeVignan, member.
Rick Ellis, vice chairman.
Brian Deschamps, member.
Super. So now you know who we are. We don't have any minutes to review. We don't have any correspondence to review. We do have 4 public hearings tonight and 4 continuations of public hearings that involve either 5 or 6 large solar array projects. I do not see any way that we are going to be able to do each one of these projects justice for their requests in one evening. That said, I'm going to just go through do we have anybody here that's interested in Sincarpia Park Drive LLC, the special permit extension request for that project? Is anybody here interested in that? Okay, I'll make sure we get to that one first. We have other projects on the agenda, extension requests for 52 Morses Lane. Anybody okay? So I can ignore that one for now. We have an extension request for 251 Mendel Road. Is anybody here relative to that in the general audience? Okay, that's good. Then we also have the grouping of Robinson Road, 1052 Main Street, and Cushing Lane. Do we have anybody that's interested in one of those 3 projects?
I'm here, and I think there are some folks on Zoom, but I'm happy to be pushed over till June 8th if you're jammed up and be flexible, so I'll
Okay, you
follow
are
your
the
lead.
project proponent? Or you are just,
Proponent.
you're okay, you're the proponent. All right, we'll keep that. We don't have anybody else in the public relative to that. And then we have our infamous 1050 Main Street project. Is there anybody from the audience, a resident of the town, that's interested in that project? Okay, so we do have, we also have available on Zoom, we have Pat Hannon, who is our conservation agent slash stormwater management coordinator, and we have Andy Bovola, who is our building inspector. All right, all that said, most people are here relative to the Sincarpia Park Drive LLC project. We've got a request for extension. We'll talk about that one first. Could the proponent explain to us why you think you should have an extension?
Yes, thank you. Jeff Roloffs. I'm outside counsel to Sincarfa with offices in Newburyport, Mass. I'm here with 4 others representing Sincarfa. Grant Dudkowski, VP of Construction, Rob Butkowski, and Jesse O'Donnell, both with Weston and Sampson, our consultants, and Mike Atkinson, Director of Development. So I did submit a written request dated May 17th, which I'm hoping you've had a chance to see. That was a letter from me describing why it is we are requesting the 2-year extension. And basically speaking, you may remember this project was approved in July of 2021. Since then, my client has undertaken a lot of steps to get ready for construction. They exercised their lease option. They recorded the decision, the board's decision. They finalized their interconnect agreement with Eversource. They filed their Army Corps self-verification, a prerequisite to construction. They were before the planning board in May of 2022 for their decommissioning bond, which was also required as a prerequisite to pulling a building permit. That process took a few weeks and ultimately resulted in an agreed-upon performance bond amount and a performance bond agreement. They went through the bid process with their contractors, which is a pretty lengthy internal review process. They selected a contractor. They actually issued what they call a notice to proceed. Basically, they were ready to go last summer. As they were preparing to start construction, as they were wrapping up some title insurance issues, it came to their attention that Brooks Avenue, which was the access route into the site off of Park Drive, was not an accepted way, as they had understood that it was. There were other title issues that came up, and they were exploring possibilities, evaluating their legal rights, etc. That led them to discussions with the butters on Park Drive at right where it intersects Brooks Avenue. And my client, I wasn't involved with this, but I understand that they were in extensive discussions with those abutters, trying to resolve what turned out to be a dispute as to whether or not the White's Farm, my client's landlord, had the rights to authorize access by Sincarfa through Brooks Avenue. So it became a point of dispute. For months, my client was trying to resolve that, and to date, they've been unsuccessful. In the meantime, they were pursuing alternatives, and based on a review of a lot of different alternative access routes into the solar array sites, and in discussions with town officials and others, they concluded that the best alternative way into these sites was via Lambert Street and an extension of Lambert Street. So that will involve, in order to make that a viable option, securing a modification or amendment from the planning board. That's pending before you. That's the next item on your agenda tonight. It requires a Conservation Commission approval. They had their first hearing on a notice of intent for that extension last night. Mr. Hannon can expand if you desire, but I guess generally I would say, I wasn't there, but generally the reception wasn't as warm as we were hoping. It looks like there's going to have to be some real work done to get us through that permitting process. There are potentially other permit requirements that are going to get triggered by that work, including possibly a MEPA process, which could take several months. So that's the situation we find ourselves in. We think Lambert Street's a good alternative, but it's going to take time to get all the permitting in place for that, and then we're going to have to go through the bid processing again and get our contractors on board. So not only is there, in our view, good cause or due cause for the delay, but also good reason to extend by 2 years, which is what we're asking for. Now, I understood somebody in town had told us that typically the board extends these decisions 6 months at a time. I don't know if that's the case or not, but I went through the bylaw and I quoted it in my letter to you. Basically, there's a provision that says for these site plan approval decisions, it provides for a 2-year term, and then provides that the applicant may be granted a single 2-year extension by applying to the planning board in writing prior to the date of expiration. So we are asking for a 2-year extension. Hopefully we won't need another 2 years, but we're going to need a decent amount of time. So consistent with that bylaw provision, we're asking for a 2-year extension. There's been a huge investment by Sincarfa in this project already made, and there's a lot more investment to make in order to secure the permits they need. So 2 years we think is warranted, justified, it's consistent with the state solar statute that you're also aware of that aims to promote solar facilities. So that's it. I'll turn it back to the board. Thank you.
Okay, Dave?
Going back to your cover letter,
Yes.
background, on July 15, 2021, after an extension hearing process, I was supposed to say extensive?
Extensive.
Okay,
Yeah.
because-
Typo. My bad.
Since we're talking about extension.
Yeah. No, that's a really Bad error on my part. No, extensive is
Okay.
what I meant there. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm just gonna throw it out there, my opinion. I know that our chairman did check with town council about the timelines for extensions, and basically it's a 2-year extension or nothing. There's really no in between according to town council.
That's kind of what I heard too. so.
Okay, so I also note that I'm glad you cited the bylaw. I really like the way you put this together, which shows Sincarpa has made all the efforts to get this thing going. And I think you meet the criteria for a 2-year extension. You have shown due cause, so I don't have any issues with a 2-year extension.
At the moment, my feeling is, I know that this is, I don't know if we should be I don't know if you had a chance to listen to Conservation last night?
I did, but I don't feel that that should impact our opinion. A 2-year extension, they still gotta meet all other permits. They come back in 2 years and they're still not anywhere with the permitting, they're in trouble. I'll say it right now. But I think that we have a lot of these solar projects that are gonna be coming up for extensions. I think that they have to show that they have met, they have due cause, you know, that they have shown that they have made every effort to move this thing along. And on this particular one, if they didn't run into the legal issue on the access road, this thing might be already built. I mean, I don't, it's as clear as day to me.
Yeah.
And I don't think conservation, I don't think we should be judging anything we do here based on what they do for the extension. I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
I do have a couple of things that I would like to say. I know that there has been, the whole board knows there has been a lot of contention about whether or not there's legal access to that particular property. Access rights are probably one of the most litigated land use items in the state of Massachusetts, if not in the country. Some of the issues goes back to King's grants of rights to access. We as a board, not only are we not equipped to make that decision whether somebody has legal access or not, we don't have the legal right to do that. That's a court issue if it comes to that point. So we cannot resolve an access issue, whether someone's got the legal right to, at this board, period. We have to judge the proposal and the extension based on the plans that are submitted to us that we either approve or disapprove. That's the access thing. In terms of the extension to the special permit, a special permit is a unique entity in the state of Massachusetts sets of laws. And I picked out one paragraph that I'm going to read into the record because it's important. It basically says that just because the permit runs out of time, the project does not have to be completed in order for it to keep going. They only have to demonstrate that they are legitimately progressing in a continuous fashion to completion. A special permit, this initial special permit that was issued, could very well go on for years. I'm going to read this paragraph because what this really is, this is kind of a precursor to the board denying a special permit and Sincarpa having to go to court to say, no, we have due cause, these are the reasons. I personally do not intend to get the town in a protracted legal battle about the right of these people to either do the project or not. Let me read the paragraph To my knowledge, this is absolutely accurate. This is the second, or item number 2 on page 4. Sincarfa's exercise of rights/activities approved in decision. Sincarfa contends that it has exercised the rights and actions permitted in the board's 2021 decision through the significant activities that it has undertaken to advance this project in reliance on and in accordance with the board's 2021 decision, since the decision was issued in July 2021. Accordingly, consistent with section 3.5F and case law related to special permits more generally, Sincarfa does not believe the decision can lapse at this point, and also that at the very least, any running of the 2-year period has been told by the circumstances here. Despite these views, Sincarfa is requesting this 2-year extension so that the record is clear. However, this request is made if and to the extent required, all rights reserved. That basically means these people have put a lot of money into this project, and they're not going to walk away from it at this point. And my limited knowledge of special permit law in Massachusetts coincides with what's in this paragraph. So regardless of what the board can out and out say, we're not going to extend it tonight, and the project is going to continue, as long as these people have the financial ability and the desire to continue with it. So we can't stop the project, is what I'm saying, regardless of what we do tonight. That said, the board has been on the other end of a significant effort on their part to try and move the project forward. I also believe that they have exercised their rights to the special permit and have the ability, regardless of what this board does tonight, to continue on with the project. In terms of access, what the board can do is we can act on the special, or how should I put this? According to the Attorney General, the special permit process has been put in place to help protect the health and welfare of the surrounding townspeople. We have to take their proposal, and if there's screening involved, if there's a drainage issue involved, that's where we have the ability to make some difference on the project. Whether or not they have the legal right to access, not our call. If they have to go to court to prove that, then that's what they've got to do. In terms of issuing the special permit extension or not, at this point, I don't see the need or the reason to not extend it, because they've already exercised the permit, and obviously they intend to pursue the project. Whether they can overcome their wetlands issues, whether there can be another revelation in terms of the way they want to access it, the board can only look at whether or not the proper screening and proper drainage has been done in terms of whichever access they propose. And that said, I'll shut up. I know there's a number of people that would like to speak relative to this project. If you want to be heard and you want to get yourself on the record, please state your name, your address, and then tell us why you're here in support or opposition to the project.
Question, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
Right now, we're just talking about the extension request.
That's correct.
Okay.
I mean, we've got to do these, there's so many things here, we've got to do them one by one.
Right. So anybody commenting should be about why or why not they feel the extension request should be issued.
That's correct.
Raymond White, 163 Lake Street. I own the project, own the land with my mother, but, I got 150 acres back there. We got one guy saying that I can't put a road in on Brooks Drive. Well, I'm gonna put a road in Brooks Drive. I have to be able to put a road in. I can't pay taxes on 150 acres and just say, you know what, I'm just gonna keep it for the birds, the turtles, the lizards. Pat Hannon says, oh no, there's so many turtles out there. He never walked in there. He was afraid of getting wood ticks, right, Pat? Were you there? Yeah, we went there for a site visit, and he says, does anybody wanna go get wood ticks? I don't wanna go in there. We never walked in there. So we don't know, I mean, obviously, when you look up Lambert Street, it looks wet. There's no doubt about it. The leaves are brown, there's no doubt about that, all right? I get it. But Brook Drive is a shoreline. You got, I look at the land we got out there. You're telling me I can't use it? You know, that's what I'm getting at. You got Eileen Street. It has a road. Why? Who put these roads in? And they name the roads.
Yep.
There's White Street in there. But who puts them in?
Again, and that's part of what Ray White said when I said at the beginning.
Yeah.
You know, this board cannot decide whether or not you've got legal
You
access.
have roads, right? They're on, I pay. It says Eileen Street. My taxes say Eileen Street. But yeah,
I understand.
Eileen Street doesn't exist. You can't use it.
I understand.
You know, it's bullshit.
The question of access.
And Pat Hannon wants to shut everything down. Pat, right? No matter what anybody does, he's shut me down on Cushing Lane. Now all of a sudden there's a river in the middle that my grandfather made in the middle of the field to divide the field so all the water doesn't run down. It's a little wet. I mean, everything's wet. Acushnet's wet. Half these houses in Acushnet wouldn't even be there. You get it? I mean, really. I mean, half these people wouldn't even have houses in Acushnet. You know what I mean? It's come on.
I understand. We've got to limit our discussion right now to the extension, and we can't decide whether you've got legal access or not. That's between.
Well, I'm getting legal access. I'm telling you right now, I'll spend every freaking penny
Legal
I have.
practical access.
And I'm putting a road in, and I'm putting a house right behind your house.
I would, Ray, I would request that you address your verbiage to the board, and, you know, we'll get discussion.
Well, you know what? You can't play nice in the town anymore. You know? I've been sitting back, shutting up. I'm not shutting up anymore.
That's fine. Anybody else from the audience? Please identify yourself once you get up there.
Hi, Kathy Murray, Lambert Street, and I understand your position, but as a resident that is gonna have trucks going by my house for over a year, you know, that isn't fair to me, and where's my compensation?
I don't want this meeting to get
I'm sorry.
into
Where's my compensation?
personalities. Address the board.
I'm sorry.
We're the ones that have got to deal with.
That's just upsetting, because we shouldn't have to deal with that.
Mhm.
However, you know, this modification to this special permit, this is a substantial change.
Okay, we're not talking about
I
that.
understand
okay.
that,
And you will get your chance, because
No,
we'll do that
it does
next.
tie
Okay.
in, because I feel that shouldn't be extended, because this change totally changed that special permit. You're having additional permits that are required, Army Corps, additional conservation. That's a major substantial change to a special permit. And usually that means that they have to refile. I know this, I mean, I work in a different town, very familiar with it, so I don't understand why such a major change is being allowed to be considered as an insubstantial modification. That's why I would ask this board to consider that and not grant this extension.
Okay. Anybody else? Like, in the audience, other than the proponent?
Mark Moorhead, I live at 41 Park Drive. I bought Brooks Ave. I just want some clarification on the special permit, that if it gets extended. The special permit request is just for the solar array. It has nothing to do with the entrances, whether it's Brooks Ave or Lambert Street. Is that my understanding? If you grant the extension of the special permit, that they can get access through anyway, whether it be Lambert, whether it be Brook, whether it be another feasible way in that they find in. Is that my understanding?
The
That we're not granting that
extension
access?
is strictly at this point, a way to cleanly extend the project, rather than to go to court and to try and make the case that the special permit has already been exercised. Okay, that's all this extension deals with. And the paragraph that I read was the setup for, well, if you don't grant the extension, we still are going to move forward with the project anyway, and we feel we have the right to. And that's all we're talking about right now. You know, in terms of where they access, how they access, whether we should address it as a minor modification, you know, that's another discussion as we move down the list relative to this project.
Yeah,
It's not, it's really, in terms of them going forward, whether we extend this or not, they can still go forward. You know, I certainly would not recommend to town council that we try and keep them from doing anything, because quite frankly, we would lose in court.
I'm just trying to understand what the special permit
I think
consists of.
I understood your question
Yeah.
in a certain way.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong. Granting the extension extends the permit as it is now,
Yes,
which means they're coming in from next to your house.
right, so you're
Then the
extending,
next step is they want to amend it,
correct,
which would move it away from your property.
that's correct.
So to me, one has nothing to do with the other. Right now, they have a permit in place.
Yeah,
They've done a ton of work in the last year in trying to get this thing up and running.
mm-hmm,
And you have to, the bylaws are very clear to me, if you make the effort. For
Yep.
instance, I'm gonna tell you something, there are a lot of extensions, sit around and watch how they all go through.
no, I was
They're
just,
all different.
yep,
There are some out there that are huge, and they've done nothing.
Yep.
And they're asking for the same, extension. The bylaws are very clear. You know, to me, I think our hands are tied for an extension.
I was just,
Otherwise, we're gonna be sued.
yeah, I was
As a
just
town,
trying
we
to
can't
get,
invite lawsuits.
all I was trying to do was get clarification.
That's how I
of-
view it.
Of the extension of the permit.
It doesn't mean that the amendment is approved, it means the existing permit is now extended.
Honey.
Somebody needs to mute themselves. Can you see a name on that?
Which, so the clarification is which the approved permit, the original approved permit is through Brooks Ave.
Yeah.
So you extend that permit and then they're asking for an adjustment to go through Lambert.
Step two,
Step
step two is
separate
the
totally.
amendment.
Right.
Yeah,
Is that my understanding of it?
Yes.
yes.
So as you said, Mr. Ellis, that granting them the special permit doesn't mean that they have legal access or not legal access. That's not for you to decide, correct?
We can't. That is a court issue.
Okay,
You know, whether it's Superior Court or
Yep.
Land Court,
Yep.
you know, or whatever court the lawyers decided should go through,
Yep.
we don't have that authority here.
okay.
And we can't make that decision.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay, I just wanted the clarification.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else from the audience? On the extension?
I guess not on the extent. Well, Patrick Fitzgerald, 80 Lambert Street. For the proposal of Lambert Street, I'm the house across from Kathy. And basically the gravel road would be an issue for me too, because the dust and everything. So you're gonna have trucks coming back and forth. And they're proposing just to pave another 20 feet or so. And then it'll be gravel. So.
Again, that's probably the next issue on the table. Again, we're just dealing with the extension right now, not the movement of the access from one place
Okay.
to another. Anyone else?
I'm sure they'd be willing to pay for a little bit more than 20 feet. I mean,
Yeah.
look at the money they've spent. You think 20, you know what I mean, another 40 feet is gonna make a difference, right, guys?
Let me begin.
Say
Yes,
Capo.
it will.
Am I
Um,
right?
We can discuss that at a separate.
Where, I understand there are a number of people, a number of issues. We're just dealing with the extension right now. I think we've heard what we need to hear from the audience, from the proponent, and we've got a pretty substantial amount of written backup for it. I'm sorry, is there somebody else on Zoom that would like to speak? Oh, all right. That being said, is there a motion to extend?
I'll make a motion to grant a 2-year extension for solar special permit extension request, Sincarfa Park Drive LLC.
Is there a second?
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Unanimous. Okay, that's the extension. Next. I am bad with papers. No, I've got one that I marked up in sequence. All right, second one on the list. Or second thing.
Do you guys have extra sets of plans, or just?
Yeah, this is just one set that I.
I've got a full set here. Do you want me to put it up, or do you want me to just hand it to you?
I have a folded set.
Do you? He's got a full set.
Easier for 2 and 2.
You want me to set this up here? Can you see it?
Yeah, I think you should for the camera.
A folded full size set for you. That's a little large for the.
Okay, again, that's,
How about we'll share it over here? You guys can see.
in deference to the members of the audience who obviously want to speak on this change of access, I'm going to request that we move out of the public hearing for the extension request from Sincarfa Park Drive LLC. That's done with, so let's close that public hearing off at this point, if I have a motion.
Motion. Close the public hearing.
Second motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. That's that one. Now, I'm going to take this out of order so that we hear from everybody in the audience that wants to be heard. And let's move on to the next thing. I would say this is a continuation of the site plan review and special permit modification. So I would entertain a motion to go into the public hearing for the site plan review, or to go into the continuation of a hearing for the site plan review and special permit modification for the change in access drive to Lambert Street from the access that was previously approved on the special permit.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, now for the fun part.
Good, thank you. Again, Jeff Roloff's counsel for the applicant. Just quickly, 2 procedural points I wanted to highlight up front before Rob gives you, opens up the substantive discussion. With respect to the procedural issue that was raised in the last hearing as to whether or not the change requires a new permit application or something like that, I just wanted to point out that we're not arguing that these changes are insubstantial. If they were, you wouldn't require a public hearing related to the modification. They are substantial, and as defined in your zoning bylaw, which is exactly why this public hearing was open. So I just wanted to point that out. You're proceeding properly by having opened a public hearing related to this modification request. The second thing I wanted to just mention up front is ultimately after tonight's discussion, we're not looking for the board to make a decision tonight. We would like to, after tonight's discussion, continue the hearing and keep it open. And that's because we want to proceed a little further through the Conservation Commission process to make sure that this Lambert Street extension is viable. Because obviously, if it turns out not to be a viable option, we're going to just hang on to the permit we have and figure out how to get up Brooks Avenue. So I wanted to point out right now that after tonight's meeting, discussion, we will be requesting a continuance of the hearing to a future date that we can discuss at the end.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's fair enough. So, what's the new scheme?
So, Rob Bukowski, Weston Sampson. Last time we were here, we were originally gonna come for a modification to the Brooks Drive access road. And then we sort of shifted gears right before. So we had presented this plan, but you hadn't had a chance to look at it before. So, what the plan shows that you have in front of you is the extension of the existing the existing Lambert Street. So it'd be about a 320-foot long extension heading up to the north. We plan, at this point, plan to pave the first 20 feet of the 30-foot wide road, and then the rest of the road would be 20 feet wide and would be proposed as gravel. So the road would head straight up to the north and access the site through the proposed westernmost array.
One thing I did have a little trouble figuring out is if I go to sheet C101, there's a legend down there that shows pavement, existing pavement proposed, perimeter gravel access path, and gravel access road. And quite honestly, I can see the symbol pretty clearly for existing pavement, or relatively clearly, but the other three I can't. I really can't tell the limit. I'm sure you can point something out, but it's not clear. If I look at this, it just looks like they're all empty.
Right.
They're not. If I bring out my magnifying glass, I can.
No,
I
sure,
can-
right, that, we can make that clear for sure. I think it's an issue with, just the shading and the hatching, and then once you make copies of the original.
I think you're right too. What was considered here didn't transfer up to
Sure.
here. And I can't tell the limits of what needs to be done. And not to give you a hard time, but these access roads have been very contentious, and changes from plans have been very contentious. And when we start with something that's not clear from the beginning, we're just setting ourselves up for endless discussion for the next 2
We can
years.
certainly make that edit and make it clear.
That's, yeah, I can't tell really what the limit of pavement is. I can't tell, I can tell where the wetland impacts are. I can tell where that gravel, or that, what do you call it, the small area of crushed stone you put up front, anti-tracking mat, I can tell where that is. But the other stuff, I can't tell. The type of graphics used do not work. That being said, it's obviously clear that the idea now is to extend Park Drive a little bit, so that you can get to your operation in another location. That part I understand. See what I mean, Dave?
Yeah.
I'm just looking at that.
Yeah, it's all faded.
Yeah, it's a little too gray. Do you have anything else that you want to say relative to this proposal?
No, I mean, as was discussed before, we were in front of the Conservation Commission last night, so.
Okay, why did you shift the road all the way over to one side? I'm just a little, was that just to leave room for that swale?
Yeah, exactly. So the proposed stormwater management consists of a swale that's gonna run along the western side of that road.
Is there any clearing that's going to have to happen of, anything other than, 2-foot high brush along that side of the property line in order to construct that road?
Once you get to the tree line, yes.
And let's see, can I see the tree line? See some gray thingies? I'm not sure I can really tell. I mean, I can see there's something that looks like it shows the edge of clearing, but,
This is the tree line right here. These small U-shaped.
okay, so that's another thing with graphics then. I mean, I can't even really see the tree line on the other side. What about right next to the roadway here?
No, this is grass up to the tree line. So the existing asphalt ends here.
Yeah,
And then this is the 20-foot long, 30-foot wide strip of asphalt, and then the gravel road with the roadside
and
swale.
clear up to here. Now, in this area, what kind of clearing is going to happen next to that gentleman that lives
So
at 80
we're
Lambert
only
Street?
clearing within this limit of work right here.
I
But it'll be, I mean, there's brush, there's trees.
I'll ask the neighbor. I haven't walked that particular spot, so, and I think that's something that either individually or as a board, we should take a look at. I mean, screening of adjacent properties is always an issue. No, go right ahead. Anything else from the board?
The tracking pad, am I reading this correctly? That's gonna be right in front of his driveway?
Well, the idea is to put it right before the asphalt so that the trucks, if they pick up any, silt or sediment on the tires, it gets a chance to knock it off so we don't track the silt onto the road.
Oh, I understand that, but I'm trying to understand, does the pavement end before we get to Mr. Fitzgerald's driveway? Or is it after his driveway? I'm not clear as to where the existing pavement ends and it transitions to his driveway. Or is it this line that's the pavement? Okay,
That's existing pavement.
so then it's gravel for him to get into his driveway? Is his driveway gravel or is it paved?
I believe it's paved.
The driveway now?
The driveway.
I have one concrete, and then I have a shell driveway, kind of making it wider
Okay.
to the side of it.
I think that's another thing that needs to be cleared up on the graphics, so we or the building inspector or conservation can look at it and say, okay, the tracking pad's supposed to be from here to here.
Right.
I guess my point is, I don't expect the resident to be driving over a tracking pad to
Yep.
get into his
Understood.
driveway, that's not
Yep.
proper. So even if it's a temporary pavement past his driveway and then the tracking pad, so that he's not having to push his tires on that.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to drive on that with a
Right.
car.
Yep.
Maybe a 40, 50, 50
Well, I
pickup.
talked about extending this pavement, am I correct?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
where is that extension point on here? I don't know.
Yeah,
I think
that's
this
part
whole
of,
piece right there,
That's it.
that's all it's proposed.
they need to clear up their graphics. I mean, rather than just pointing to these faded things that you can barely see. There needs to be a little graphic improvement there, I think.
Maybe we put the binder course and we extend it a distance past his driveway before we get to a tracking pad.
Yeah,
And it gets beat up, they can fix it or whatever, but then he can at least go in and out without any issue.
And just as a matter of observation, these tracking pads don't really seem to be quite long enough to keep the sand, silt, and sediment off of town roads at the very least, and certainly from in front of this gentleman's property. I think we need a tracking pad that's at least 3 or 4 times the length of what's shown here. Maybe you can do something with it after most of the construction's done, but these little 30-foot long tracking pads have not proved adequate, to me anyway, to keep sand and silt off of the adjacent roadways or properties. That's just a comment at this point. I would request that you think about that and incorporate that into a revision of this plan that clearly shows the limits of existing pavement, proposed pavement, let me get the terminology right here. You call them different things. We had the gravel access road, perimeter gravel access path, existing pavement and proposed pavement. There's got to be something that clearly shows up on the plan that shows the limits of these things. And then I would request a tracking pad substantially longer than what's here. That's me personally. As Dave said, it really makes sense to put this before that gentleman's access to his garage or whatever that structure is. I mean, that basically is going to be tracking up his property. And some of those tracking pad stones are a little on the sharp side. It may prove injurious to people's tires. Maybe not so much heavy trucks, but certainly the residential traffic that's going to go in and out of that structure on his property.
We agree.
The other concern I have is the water flow under the road. I have concerns with the term used is rock sandwich. So essentially, we're putting an old school stone culvert under the road that to me can be too easily plugged up with silt, leaves, pine needles. I know you're trying to keep the road low, just to keep your, your crossing minimized, but isn't it, maybe we can do a shallow box culvert, something, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to, balance minimizing the wetland disturbance too. So we've used this rock sandwich design at other sites, and the idea is the larger stone has bigger pore sizes, so it's like 3 to 6 inch diameter stone, and the water can pass through it. So we're maintaining the connectivity between, the wetlands on either side of that access road. So that's the idea behind it.
I mean, ultimately, conservation's gonna have
Yeah,
to
they-
okay that, aren't they?
Yes.
I mean, it is filling over the wetland, and certainly has the potential to affect the drainage scheme.
And they will be subject to extensive permitting, so I think that might resolve
If it
itself.
goes that way.
Yeah.
The,
I got an off-the-wall question. You talked about Brooks. This is Lambert. Mr. White mentioned another one in the middle. Eileen?
Yeah, that's an existing paper street, part of the already approved subdivision from whatever that dates back to.
Have you looked at that? In other words, you have butter issues on one side, this one you have wetland issues. Is the middle one maybe better? Have you looked at it?
We actually did look at that. I don't have the specific answer for you now of why it was a non-option. I'd have to talk to our general counsel about it, but he ran that down extensively before we went to Lambert.
So it has to do with rights?
I think it has to do with rights and access issues as well. The existing condition of Eileen is not very wide. We actually did look into purchasing, there was a property that was for sale back there recently where there's a trailer home. We spoke to the agent and did some diligence on it, and it wasn't viable. So.
Okay. I mean, you're gonna have to prove that through in order to get this permitted. You have to prove you have no other viable access.
Understood.
In my opinion,
Understood.
Going through the MIPA, if this triggers MIPA.
That's what we need to work through. So we've already reached out to Natural Heritage and had a discussion with them because this area was, when it was originally permitted, was not mapped as priority habitat, but they updated the mapping and now it is. So we've spoken with them. They received a copy of the NOI, so we're waiting to get some feedback from them. But we also plan on talking to DEP, the Army Corps, MIPA.
Okay.
So there's a lot of steps, as Jeff mentioned before.
this project's got a long way to go.
Right.
Yeah, Army Corps is in play because your total is over 5,000 square feet. Is there a way to reduce the wetland alteration elsewhere? I know this is not a planning board matter.
No, so when we originally, the road that goes east-west on the original plan, we picked basically the narrowest part of the wetland to build the access road through. So there's really, I mean, if we were to move it, it would probably be more wetland.
We also had explored the option of obtaining a license from Eversource to use the transmission easement, and we're unsuccessful.
Yeah, that's not a surprise.
Yeah, from both options, coming from the New Bedford side as well, but there's a regulated wetland that spans that easement. So the access through Park Drive, traversing north and then to the west, was the most viable option, but a lot of roadblocks. And Eversource, as you can imagine, was not very helpful.
I will say this, Mr. White, it's your right in Massachusetts to be able to access your upland. One way or another, you have a right to access your land.
Thank you. Yeah.
And people may not like it in their backyard, but one way or another, you have a right to access your property.
In 2001, that was supposed to have been taken over from conservation, and I filed a loss of sale on that for 1.8 million. The town agreed to take it over and never gave a dime. It was in the newspaper and everything. We wouldn't even be here today, and now I'm stuck with that, Yeah. Yeah, he had it sold.
Now, I know we have people in the audience, other than Mr. White, who would like to speak. I just want to get anybody that wants to speak on this modification and how it's going to affect their property. I want to get that into the record tonight. So if there's anybody out there that wants to go on record relative to the change in access to the Lambert Street access for this project, please get up, identify yourselves, and make your concerns known. Even the second time if that's required, because this is the time to talk about the Lambert Street access.
Patrick Fitzgerald. As far as the rock sandwich,
You're 80
Lambert.
Lambert Street, okay.
I know they say the water will pass through it, but what about the spotted salamanders, spotted turtles, boxer turtles? How do they get through a rock sandwich, you know? But like I said, that might be something that
Well,
gets
but,
worked.
I think it's an excellent point.
It's a valid point, and I think conservation is gonna have to deal with that. I mean, there have been other ways to deal with animal and insect migration from one side to the other, whether it means they've got to put some 6 or 8 inch diameter pipes in besides the rock sandwich to
Right.
allow access. You know, that's kind of a conservation issue, but in terms of the impact to your daily life and your property, you know, we've already requested that they move this anti-tracking mat back, make it
Right.
longer, so that the impact of certainly sand and silt on your property or cut tires is not going to be an issue. Are there other things that you think the board should be concerned with?
I mean, just the traffic and school buses and, you know, all them trucks running in and out of there every day in the residential areas. It's just a concern for, I think, the entire neighborhood, really.
Mm-hmm.
Making the turns, the oncoming traffic, and just get navigating through that neighborhood. It's really not designed for a commercial project of that magnitude.
I know we talked about that.
But I do understand Mr. White's issue as well, you know.
We talked about picking a route that, they're not everywhere, getting lost and traveling throughout everybody, unnecessarily making life miserable for people that shouldn't be on the path. Whatever the path of least resistance is, as a traffic plan, if you will. We did talk about that.
We did.
And I think we're gonna, and I honestly, from my perspective anyway, I think we're gonna end up with something like that. Well, I don't live there, but my nightmare would be that these semis or larger trucks get in that area and they're lost. And they're backing up into people's driveways, trying to turn around. It's not an easy navigation, whether it's off of Park Drive or off of Lambert Street, to access this property. And that, I think, that should be something that you need, as Sincarpa will need to address to us relative to this modification request.
We will absolutely have that. I would like to point out that the currently permitted access is further into the neighborhood than this new access.
Oh, it's disruptive either way, but it's going to be even more disruptive if people get lost trying to get through there. I know we've got GPS that sometimes isn't quite all that accurate, but it's more important that, especially during the clearing operation. I mean, from what I've seen from these things, the biggest disruption is when the land is cleared. You know, that's when it's the messiest. You know, that's when you've got a lot of truck traffic, either hauling chips or logs or brush out of there. Hopefully we're past the push the brush into a pile and let it burn for 3 days. I don't think we're going to be doing that in the town of Acushnet anyway, probably the state of Massachusetts. But that seems to be the worst time. After that clearing gets done, I mean, the deliveries for materials, it's not so much of an issue, and it's not so messy. And a lot of the drainage stuff and the roadway stabilization has already been in place when that happens. I mean, I go past the solar project that happened down at the sharp turn in Middle Road all the time. It's part of my everyday morning run. And other than when they were actively building it, there's virtually no traffic there. And even when they were actively building it, that one didn't involve a lot of clearing, it was done on bogs. But in terms of, material delivery and stuff like that, there was rarely a truck down there, even during that time. That's just a comment.
They cleared Main Street and we never heard of people about traffic or, I mean, that was a big.
Again, it's typical, what I've seen so far, it's alteration of drainage patterns, improper control of sedimentation during construction. And again, the noise disruption and trucking that happens relative to the clearing of these sites. Other than that, I haven't seen that it's been that bad.
A building of a house would be much more, a building of houses would be much more constructive.
I probably would be.
You know,
I mean,
like
between the cement
construction,
trucks and the
sheet
well
rock,
drillers and
Yeah.
the material
Yeah.
delivery and the
One or the other.
There's also
those
no
those
word.
yahoos that do construction, they're, but
I live on Lake Street, you know that.
you're
All
my
right,
next door neighbor,
all right,
Ray.
and I watch out for turtles all the time. They come up and they have their babies right in my field. Then they always go up to the highest point. They come out of a swamp that you can't believe. No person could ever walk through it. It is so many trees have fell in there, and they actually get through that. And it amazes me because that's where they come from. And you think they'd take an easier route, but when they talk about getting over a road, they'll get over a road if they want to go over it. They'll go.
And again, that's an issue for conservation.
Yeah.
That's an issue for the Army Corps of Engineers. It may be an issue for MIPA. And with all those and other things considered, we may be back to coming off Park Drive again. I don't know.
Yeah.
In any case, based on the difficulty that they're going to have permitting this, I would entertain, would the proponent like to continue this public hearing on this modification to another time?
Mr. Chairman, we do. Are you clear that the public comments are over? Because if there are more, we
I
want to
made
hear
a
them.
call
Yeah, okay.
on Zoom and I didn't hear any response. Is
Yeah,
there
okay.
anybody, I'll do it a second
Yeah,
time,
yeah.
is there anybody on Zoom that wishes to be heard? Okay, then let's move on.
We are requesting a continuance, and the question is to when. We heard earlier, you got June 8th, June 22nd, July 13th, and July 27th. Personally, I'd go for July 13th, but what do you guys want to?
We are on the agenda for the Conservation Commission to continue our hearing from last night on the 14th, but it's been brought to our attention there might not be a quorum for that meeting, and we'll get pushed to the following meeting, which I believe is the 28th, if I'm not mistaken. So before we pick a date to continue to, I guess we just want to understand procedurally here, if we are to get an approval on this from the planning board, or is your approval going to be contingent on the Conservation Commission's approval first, or vice versa? Because the order of operations we'd like to understand first before we commit to it.
I mean, it's better for us if it runs concurrently. For you to propose something to us right now and then have to change it through the conservation process, then you're back in front of us again. I don't think that's a valuable use of anyone's time. I mean,
Agreed.
from my end, I would rather see it pushed further out so that you've got time to get a handle on all of the other issues relative to this Lambert Street extension. And along with that, I would also like to see you improve the plans a bit and make it a little more clear where the proposed roadway begins, ends, and the different types of construction begin and end.
Understood. And yeah, we agree. More time is probably best for this situation. I'm sorry, can you read off the next meeting agendas again?
June 22, July 13, July 27.
think July 13th would probably be prudent.
I think, I would suggest July 13. If we get to that point and we've got, not much to talk about, given the status with Concom or whatever, we'll just write in a request to continue it, so people are aware of that ahead of time.
Okay.
But let's aim for July 13, if that's okay with the board.
A couple just points of order here. We're asking for some alterations at the Fitzgerald driveway.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you're going to make those changes before you go back to conservation, so that we're all working on the same plan?
Yeah, we are.
Looking at the same plan?
We heard you tonight. I think those are reasonable comments and good suggestions. So we're going to go back, evaluate what changes to make based on that feedback, the feedback we got from the commission last night. I think that they've got a peer review consultant coming in also. So, rather than submit an updated plan next week that reflects.
I agree.
Yeah. So
I
we
agree.
are,
I'm
but
just
before
making
July
sure
13th.
you heard us.
Yes, totally. We did.
Loud and clear.
No problem.
I
And
don't
we'll
think-
submit the same plans to both, so you'll see the changes.
My opinion is we don't approve anything without conservation first. I don't want to do things backwards. To me.
They said the same thing to us last night about vice versa.
Yeah,
So
saying
we kind of need to know who
Yeah.
wants to go first.
this is a significant commitment for us to move forward, so we need to.
Well, I think, I'll explain my position, and I'm sure there are people that will watch it from conservation. And in my opinion, and in my experience, to me, it makes no sense for, let's just say, you continued it 2 weeks down the road. We close the public hearing, and we approve it. Then they deny it. So now your options are to appeal their decision, or come back to us with another amendment. Doesn't make any sense to me.
I think
Either way,
sometimes.
we determine either way, even on the other entrance, we determined you needed to amend it because you were, at that time, and I don't know the situation now, but you were using a 40-foot way, squeezing it down to using only half at that time. And we considered that requiring an amendment. So either way, you need an amendment, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, so I think.
Unless somehow you miraculously prove that you can go with the original plan as approved.
Right, so I think it's worth just keeping this question out there, and as we make progress in this proceeding, in the Concom proceeding, we're gonna have a more informed basis for deciding whether it makes sense to get one decision before the other. Like I said earlier, we actually don't wanna get a modification approved from you if it looks like we're not gonna get the approvals we need for the Lambert Street extension, because at that point, we're just gonna stick with the permit we have, right? So I think let's keep that, topic open for now.
Yeah.
And as we get deeper into the Concom process and we have a better handle on what that's gonna entail and where it might be leading, we'll be in a better position to say, we think one of you should go before the other. I mean, obviously, somebody needs to go first at some point, right?
We just want to make sure the boards are in lockstep with one another, that's all.
Yeah.
We don't want to
Yep.
be spinning our wheels.
Should we, is anyone from the Concom on tonight? Should we get their feedback?
I don't see anybody up there. I've asked for comments a couple of times from.
Pat was there. Pat was there.
He was, and Andy was there, but they're not there anymore.
Andy's still hiding behind the scenes up
Oh,
there.
is he?
He's an iPhone. I believe.
Oh, okay.
Uh, I would say, I think you gotta go in front of Concom first.
Oh,
before you
absolutely.
Come back to us. I think that is just, I think that's just the order. I think this thing should have been done in the very beginning of this whole process.
We thought so too, and we
Yeah.
brought that up to them last night, and they insisted that the planning board make a decision first. So I was hoping that someone from the Concom could be on tonight and we could coordinate.
I mean,
and-
you know, when you look at both,
saying that.
from,
They said
from
that
our
they should
perspective, we're looking at access to the
The Army Corps. I didn't hear that at all.
We had asked for that permit to be
I mean,
conditioned
we're-
upon that approval, and they said.
I think we said it
Yeah,
earlier,
they
we're not
said
gonna
planning board.
tell somebody they can't access their property.
Right.
You know, but we are gonna look at ways to condition the access wherever it may be, once we know where it is. And I don't know, I think we've pretty much talked it out. I would entertain a motion to continue this public hearing to July 13th, at a time to be determined.
Well, it'll be at normal time, right? It was just
Yeah.
6:30.
Well, I mean, we usually, that's right, everything's lumped together now, we don't give the people
I think it's
specific
supposed to be a
agendas, so.
specific date
Yeah,
and
yeah.
time, so
Yep.
I'll make that motion to continue the public hearing to July 13th at 6:30.
I second that.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Aye, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Paul. Let's see here. One, and one. See, we did one. We have not proceeded to 2, 3, or A, B, C, and D.
A, B, C.
Well, there was,
A, B.
there was,
A and B on.
I separated the,
You
the
gotta, you
request,
gotta,
the request,
Oh, you're-
part- the request from the discussion on other topics.
Thank you. Yep, thank you.
That's that. Would entertain a motion to go into the public hearing for the solar
we gotta
special.
close this one.
Oh, I'm sorry, what's
Close
that?
the other one.
No, we did, well, all right,
We continued.
well, we voted to extend it. We're not really closing it. We
No, no, no.
continued it.
Right, but we gotta close the public hearing for
Okay,
that
fair enough.
and open up for the next one. If I'm
Motion.
correct, right?
Motion to go out of the public hearing for, I'll just say it that way, out of the public hearing for the site plan review and solar special permit modification for Lambert Street.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now we're out of it. Ready for the next one?
Yep, motion to open the public hearing for the solar special permit extension request, Distributed Solar Development LLC, 52 Morses Lane.
Okay. Now, both of these are,
Second.
yeah, okay, second.
All
in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay, sorry. I think this is on the lighter side for an extension request. Like Dave was saying earlier, every one of these is a different animal,
Yeah.
and there probably aren't more differences in the animals than Sincarpa and this 52 Moses Lane.
Hey, guys.
Hey, John.
Is there anybody here that wants to speak about the extension request for 52 Morses Lane?
No.
Okay.
Oh, right here.
Hi.
Oh, sorry.
This is Brandon Smith from New Leaf Energy. I'm the proponent of the project. I can go into the project a little bit, add some color to our extension request if the board would like.
You're certainly welcome to add to the request. I would actually recommend it at this point.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so again, Brandon Smith, I'm with New Leaf Energy, civil engineer. I'm also joined on the call with me today is Jared Connell, also from New Leaf Energy. So the extension request that you have in front of us for 52 Morses Lane, as the letter specifies, we're requesting an extension per the Acushnet General Bylaw, Article 8, Section 3.5, Paragraph F, for a 2-year extension. A little bit of background on the project. So this was originally approved by the board back in June of 2021. Since then, we have moved the project as we've made a lot of progress, been working on the project to get it as far as we were able to. So there's, as the previous applicant mentioned, right, we've moved it as far as we can, but it's a little bit more simple with this project. It really comes down to interconnection delays. So as I'm sure you're aware, dealing with so many solar projects, right, a big piece of these projects is that interconnection application that's filed with the utility. That for this project, that was done back in July of 2019. So, before we came in front of the board here, typically, in a normal, I guess, pre-COVID times, that time frame is typically 12 months or so. But this project was flagged for a group study. And I'm not sure if the board's familiar with these, but basically with the proliferation of solar in the area in Southeast Mass, it was decided that these multiple projects need to be looked at in aggregate rather than individually, which is kind of was the original par for the course. So this project was flagged for that group study. This project also, in addition, was flagged for a transmission study. Again, these are all Eversource studies that the project was flagged for that just extended that interconnection time frame. So at this time, we are, the group study has been complete. It's been complete, but the transmission study is ongoing. And Eversource will not issue our interconnection agreement, which is, you may be aware, right? That's kind of the end result that we need before we can really, build the project and connect it to the grid. We are expecting that transmission study to be complete in June or July, and then the interconnection agreement will immediately follow that. There is an additional piece to that where they will basically tell us when, what upgrades, the time frame for any upgrades that they need to make will be complete, and that will also play into construction schedule. But we are, as I mentioned, right, where this is all a matter of when, not if. On our part, we've completed all permitting. We've completed a full site design, and most importantly, we've even partnered with DSD, who will be the owner of the project, construction and owner of the project, which we would not do that if we were not serious about making this project a success. So that's I think that is really the gist of it. As you mentioned, right, this letter I think gives a brief summary of that. Each board's a little bit different here. I wasn't sure, how much the board would be looking for, but we'd be happy to provide material for the record, kind of showing this time frame and what we've been, working through.
Members of the board?
Also happy to answer any questions the board may have.
You say 4 years ago you applied for interconnection permit? 4 years ago?
Correct. Yep, July of 2019 we submitted the application. And that's why, right,
do you have anything in writing that will tell me that it's due in the next 2 weeks, as you say?
Well, I'm not sure if we have anything in writing for when it, I think that that's a little bit, we have an interconnection team that interfaces with Eversource, and so there's a little bit of, kind of verbal back and forth that we try to get some information from them, but obviously we can only push them so much. But at the very least, we can definitely provide you with documentation of the past dates that I just would mention.
My feeling is it's still speculation that this will even go
I mean,
through.
you could very well be saddled with a huge upgrade cost to do the interconnection permit that would make the project unfeasible. The project that just happened before you, we've seen those people regularly. We can see how they've earnestly been trying to get through a lot of the issues that they had before they even had an interconnection permit. I don't see that here. You know, and certainly on the basis of the letter, I don't think there's anything very substantial here that, of an investment of time, money, and resources into this, other than, well, we haven't gotten our interconnection permit yet from Eversource. Again, unfortunately for you, you've been preceded by a project where they've spent a lot of time and a lot of money on a lot of different issues, even relative to them getting their interconnection permit, which they now have. I'm not convinced I'm not convinced that the special permit has been exercised, I guess is really what it amounts to. The other project, for sure, there's no question that they exercised their rights in regards to that special permit. I don't see that here. And it's up to the board.
I understand. I understand that, and I can assure you, we've spent a considerable amount of money and considerable amount of time. So what we would like is the chance to put together information for the board to show that due cause. So tonight, we would like, if the board pleases, we would like a continuation, so that we have a chance to be able to provide that.
We're not going to be meeting until after your permit expires. You should have submitted whatever you had for this hearing, because now you've left us with not much to decide here. I don't see any reason to grant the 2-year extension. I think you should work towards getting your interconnection permit. When you do, then refile, and then you'll be ready to go.
Well, the June 3rd date, that was when the board voted, but the actual decision wasn't submitted or wasn't provided to us, the applicant, until a later date. I believe you could check your records. I believe it's sometime in July. So there is time to continue, have us provide you this, the history of the project, the documentation of everything that we've been doing. And I guess, part of that is because we've done everything. We've just been poised and ready to go, shovels in the ground as soon as we get that go ahead from the utility. So that's part of why we've been quiet. I guess in a way it's a clean project, right? We don't have these access issues, so there hasn't been really reason to be in front of the board. But again, we'd like that chance to provide that information.
I had a brief discussion with the town administrator this morning. When do you feel your permit expires? What date?
I can double check what the date is on the permit. It was a little bit odd back in the day. Let's see. Bear with me. So let's see. $6/24 is when these were signed, or 6/23 is when the chairman signed.
When did the clerk receive the signed permit? I think that my discussion today, I believe that probably starts the tolling on the time frame for the special permit.
That is July 30th.
July 30th or 3rd?
Yes.
30th?
July 30, yep, July
Okay.
30th.
I'm going to take that as fact. I believe you're closer, so your permit's not ready to expire in a few days, I would entertain a motion from the board to continue this public hearing to, and we'll pick a date, and prior to that date, I believe it's 1 week before, we will have all of your documentation relative to why you think we should even consider a 2-year extension.
Yes, that, you will have that package 1 week or more prior to the meeting.
When would you like this extended to? See, I do it all the time.
No, we need to come up with it, we need to figure out, Rick, just the exact date. I've heard multiple things the past 2 years.
Oh, I have too.
So, and I don't know really what truly is factual.
And to be quite honest with you, and I would need a clarification from town council, I believe that even if it's 4 days from now, they've put in their request for an extension.
Understood, I guess.
And that means we have time, that they've done what they legally needed to do. They've requested an extension from us before their current permit expires. So now it becomes a matter of, do we deny it tonight, do we accept it tonight, or do we continue to act on it until such time as they provide adequate backup and reason?
I feel at this point that it should be denied and let them reapply underneath the new bylaw rule, because it's not like it's dead away.
Fair enough.
I mean, they're looking for the extension, however, to the best of my knowledge, this board hasn't heard anything from them since it was, requested.
Yep.
And since that June 3rd date, okay? Unlike the previous proponent, as you said, was working very diligently at getting things done, okay? So there really isn't, and I think we just put I just think we'd be doing the town justice by, at this point. I mean, we went through all this extensive stuff, and I don't think they just follow through and do due diligence on any of this stuff,
Okay.
up until the last minute.
Okay.
That's how I feel about it.
Yep.
I don't know how anybody else feels about it, but that's where I'm sitting with it. I think they just,
I think I know the answer to the question, but what are your feelings, David?
I concur with Mr. Boucher, only because we have so many solar farms in town that were approved. I wasn't a part of that, just so you know. They were prior to my time, but there was just an influx of just tons of them. And I know that some of them didn't apply until they got their interconnection permit. The one off the middle road, I know that, I remember seeing that. And then there are others that were so close, they filed, they like Sincarpa, that's a pretty substantial, they have it in hand.
Yep.
So there are different ways of going through your permitting, and, it looks like you tried to do it ahead of time, but for whatever reason, you're stuck with Eversource, whereas others weren't stuck. And I just can't view in good conscience that a special permit being issued for 2 years should run until Eversource finally gives you something. I'm sorry, I don't see any significant activity other than what you're telling me behind the scenes with the interconnection permit. And, the one that we just saw, which we granted, is night and day to this one. And I know there's another one on our agenda. I don't see any activity. I just, in good conscience, can't. I think you should reapply when you have the permits in hand, and you're ready to go.
Well, we'd like the chance to show you that there has been a lot of work done. It's just not with this board to get this project. So that's why we would like a continuance Or alternatively, we'd like to withdraw this extension request without prejudice, and so that we can basically come back with a more substantial documentation for you for an extension request. I think that we'd be happy to just withdraw this application for this extension request as is. Because right now I understand everything that you're saying, but you just don't have the we haven't provided you the information, and that's our fault. But we have it, and we would like to
But I'm
have
not,
a chance for you to.
in
share
rebuttal,
that
I'm not
information.
convinced that it would change my mind, because I have no idea how long this Eversource thing could take.
It has been 4 years. I
I
mean,
mean, you're right.
that's a long time.
There's an issue there with something. Transmission study, I don't know what that means, but it sounds pretty big. And, it's like, figure it out, come back to us when you figured it out. That's my opinion. I think otherwise
I understand, and I understand that it may not change your decision, but I think, it would be good for you to see some of that information.
I'm going to recommend that you request to withdraw your application for a special permit extension without prejudice. I would ask that you do that. If you do intend to come back with something else, one of the things you need to come back with, and we'll have town council review it, as to what the actual end date of your existing special permit is. Whether it's June 3rd, July 30th, 2024, I have no idea at this point, but you need to come up with some information that pins that date down. And you certainly would need to come in with additional things other than this letter to say why you haven't been able to accomplish anything in 4 years. And then we've got to make the decision whether we think that that's even valid or not. That's your risk.
I mean, can I just say one thing?
Sure.
I mean, do we have, at this point, because he's already got the feel of the board that he's going to be denied, he decides he wants to withdraw without prejudice.
Mhm.
However, is that even
He can withdraw it.
after we've had a discussion and basically pushed back against it, and all of a sudden he wants to back out of it?
We can tell him no if he can come up with his other, I mean, that's again up to the board, and it's up to him. I mean, as to whether he wants to just withdraw it. I mean, if he withdraws it, he certainly can withdraw it.
Okay.
Will it change anybody's mind here? Maybe not. That's,
Well, yeah, we would like to take your recommendation, and so I would like to formally request that the extension request be withdrawn without prejudice.
motion? Let him withdraw it anyway. Yes, no problem. Or an alternative motion to deny the special permit extension request, one or the other.
I would like to make the motion that we deny the extension request for 52 Morses Lane for this solar project.
Second,
I'll second the motion.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. That's it. If you want to continue, you're going to have to prove somehow that you've exercised the special permit with all the necessary legal prerequisites.
Members of the board, this is Jared Connell from New Leaf. I just thank you for your attention on this. I just wanted to add, before we move off the topic, wanted to ask what the distinction was that you were seeing between the interconnection stage of this project and the prior one. I'm not totally familiar with the prior project's interconnection stage, but all of the projects in this area are subject to the same group study. So all of the all of the efforts with Eversource and the investments and the studies and everything apply very similarly across the board to all the projects. So I think you'll see that when we submit our additional materials and the delay logs from the utility, and certainly when we were permitting back in 2020 and 2021, we didn't think we were doing that prematurely under any reasonable, circumstance. With the utility, we would have had our agreement and been under construction by now. So we certainly didn't see any of these coming, but I think we're in a vastly similar stage to the prior project, and we can point that out to you, but I just wanted to understand the distinction that the board was seeing between the two projects.
I understand. Unfortunately, your position tonight is that there's been 4 years that's gone by. From our end, we've hardly seen anything done at all, and no documentation was supported to show us specifically, what you've done and some idea of the cost and manpower that it took. We haven't seen that tonight, okay? And that's a problem for you, and the fact that you waited, 4 years before you came back to see us at all. That's another thing that shows us that you really haven't pursued it from our vision very diligently. There's a motion on the table. We understand your position. And there's a second. I've got to ask for a vote at this point from the board. There's been a motion made and seconded.
It hasn't been 4 years. Our permit was received 2 years.
Again, I'm not going to get into an argument match. All of this information should have been presented to us a week before tonight. It was not. That is your problem. And now you're going to be a little bit behind the 8 ball trying to prove that you've exercised a special permit. Again, there's a motion on the table. There's been a second. I'm going to call for a vote.
We already voted.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's it.
We're already voted. We're done. We're done tonight. If you want to come back with something else on this project, you're welcome to come back and try to convince us that the time frame wasn't out and you're entitled to an extension.
We absolutely will do that, and I apologize. I didn't mean to come across as argumentative. I was just trying to make a clerical point that our permit was received in 2021, so that was 2 years ago. We didn't. The permit is not 4 years old at this stage. I didn't want people
Just
to say that you didn't
to answer
that all.
But to answer your question, a little clarity, you're owed that. The last project submitted 4-page document that included a statement that they have secured an interconnection services agreement with NStar Electric. They were ready to go a year ago, and when they were ready to get going, an abutter to the paper street objected, hired an attorney, and that put them in a quagmire, and they've been working through it for a year now. Then the abutter on the other side of the paper street said, I don't want it on my side either. So they went from going from a 40-foot way to a 20-foot way to no way, and they found another paper street to go through, which now requires wetland alteration. And so it's more, and that's been going on for 8, 9, 10, 12 months, and they already have their permit. They were ready to go a year ago. You're nowhere near ready to go, from what I can tell. And then we have others on the agenda later on tonight, you can sit and watch, where they've already broken ground because they already have done work on site, and they have their permits in hand. And to me, that's the only way we can distinguish between granting or not granting. Activity happening, permits in hand, no permits in hand, no activity. To me, we got too many of these to just give everybody a free flag and go right on by. Sorry.
And I'm with Dave on that one. Don't try to compare your project to one of the other ones. Every one of these projects is unique, and we have to consider all the facts and all the information in front of us tonight when the request has been submitted. We've considered it. We've had a vote. You've got to go talk between each other and decide what your next avenue is.
Thank you very much, that's helpful.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
All right, that's two. On the public hearings. I would, okay, 251 is Leaf Energy again. All right, I would like to close the public hearing for the solar special permit extension for 52 Morses Lane. I would entertain a motion to close that public hearing.
Second.
So moved.
Second, all right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay, that's closed. That said, I would like to open the solar permit special extension request for 251 Mendel Road, also from Leaf Energy. A motion,
Motion open.
second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unfortunately, gentlemen, I mean, you've already kind of heard before we get into anything further, you've already heard the direction of the board. I think we're very similar on this project as we were to the previous one we just discussed. We have a short letter saying that we didn't get our interconnection permit. We would like a 2-year extension. With not much else that this board has seen relative to effort to move forward with this project. That's what we have to act on tonight.
Yeah, and we have to request the withdrawal of the extension request without prejudice,
Okay.
without discussion.
Feelings of the board, motion?
I'll make a motion to deny the extension request.
Okay, that's the motion. Second? Have a second on the motion? Yes?
Second.
Yep, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, you're in the same boat on this one. You're gonna have to prove that you exercised your special permit.
Thank you for your time tonight. Yeah, appreciate it.
Go talk to your lawyers and see what you'd like to do from here on out. Okay, I would entertain a motion to close the solar permits extension request, solar special permit extension request for 251 Meadow Road.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay, we're done with that one. Super, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you for your time, appreciate it.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. Okay. Then we've got the next trio. Plus we have 1050 Main Street from Nexamp, which is one situation. Then we have a group of 3 of them. This is discussion and continuation of several other projects. Let's take the first one, Cushing Lane. Is there somebody that wants to speak on Cushing Lane?
Good evening, members of the board. John Markey Jr. here, and with me online are a number of representatives from Nexamp. Most importantly, Nate, who is the engineer who was here last time and presented to you and gave you the updated plans. I am hopeful that you received the summary that you had asked for the last time. It said on May 1st, I made these changes to each of the 4 plans. So I thought of the 4 of them as kind of in a similar circumstance. So if you wanted to call 1050 first, if you want to explain to me
Well,
why.
they are separate permits.
I understand that, no, but if you want to, you said there's 1 and then a group of 3, so I didn't know how you, whatever your interest is, I'm happy to
Well,
answer.
again, you know, when I look at Cushing Lane, Robinson Road has been started to some degree, but certainly the one that's had the most activity from our end is 1050 Main Street.
Yep.
The other 3 are relatively the same, but they are, again, a little bit different.
Sure.
So let's talk about Cushing Lane. I would entertain a motion to continue the discussion for the Nexamp Solar project on Cushing Lane.
So moved.
Second?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. Make your pitch.
Sure, so as for each of the 4 projects, if you take a look at what was sent in today, it talks about what the changes were or the upgrades were that you had requested. Some of them related to the thickness of the, the road all the way through, the plantings that you wanted, and confirmation on the fire access with some section details. So if you look at the memo that was prepared by Beals and Thomas and sent in on Nexamp, if we're gonna deal with Cushing Solar first, there are 3 separate changes that are referenced on that, that attended to address your primary planning board concerns. With Cushing Lane, we fully understand that there is a separate Conservation Commission issue that we're dealing with Mr. Hannon with, and that you're not gonna resolve tonight, and I'm not gonna resolve tonight. But as far as the Cushing Solar, so I can walk through those 3 changes with you, or I can turn it to Nate. If you'd like to handle that, I'm fine.
Sure. Nate Bouts, Fields and Thomas here on behalf of Nexamp. I know last time we went through each plan sheet by sheet. If you guys would like to do that again, I don't know if you have a hard copy of the plans in front of you.
As opposed to what happened last time, I mean, we had 4 sets of plans, multiple sheets to each proposal. There is no way that a quick overview of all of that is going to be done in one night. And I think we're at the same location here. We did get a set of plans that had numerous updates noted on it. I think 4 or 5 out of them was just change in the date of the plan. The last revision date I saw was the 21st of May. That May 21st revision on Nexamp in Cushing Lane, is that the plan that we're discussing right now?
So we're talking about the plan sets issued May 1st, and those were delivered to the town, I believe, May 2nd or 3rd.
The plans that I received from, or that the board received, the town received, it says, we've got 6 revisions, 1 through 6 say revised for date only. So to me, there's no change in those plans. The most current one, actually, is, oh, sorry, revised for construction. I'm sorry, I'm confusing plans. That's me. I'm getting too old for this stuff. 427, and then we have a 5-1 revised for construction on the Cushing Solar project. Is that the plan we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay,
correct.
sorry.
Yep.
That's good that Dave is here to keep me in line.
And then, just so that you know, and I'll let Nate talk about the substance of it, you had mentioned the last time that in addition to the plans, you wanted a 1-page summary so that it would be easy to say, draw your attention to page this, and page that. And there was a 1-page document that was sent over today.
I didn't see that. Did you guys see that?
It's not my
Okay,
packet.
so,
No,
as you know, I believe it was sent to Mark, and Mark is away, and it just got sent today, because I said, if I'm going there, this is one thing they asked for. I do have it on my iPad, and I'm happy to put it in front of any one of the board members, or I'm happy to let Nate walk you through it verbally.
All right, let's try the verbally first. I mean,
Yeah.
what are the substantive changes on this May 1st plan versus
Sure. So-
the original permitted plan that the special permit references?
Yep. So based on planning board comments from the April 20th meeting, there was discussions about having a construction sequence notes more clearly put on the plans. So on sheet C200, those have been listed out, more elaborate construction sequence. And I know that was a universal comment for all the plan sets, so you will notice that on each of the revised plans. In addition, for Cushing Solar, on sheet C400, the plant schedule was updated to include maximum on-center spacing and mature tree growth height. And lastly, on sheet C500, the detail sheet, the planning board requested that the fire access lane had the same depth profile of gravel as a normal access road. So previously it was 6 inches, and now it is 12 inches to match the access road.
I'm gonna slow you down just a little bit. I'm old and slow these days. The construction sequence notes, seems like 3 lines to describe how the project is gonna progress is,
No, it's up here.
oh, we've got another one, okay. We got construction sequence and construction sequence notes, I'm sorry. Let me read it.
While he's reading that, I have a question for you. Somebody supplied us with photos.
Yeah, so this related to everything else you've been doing earlier in the evening, whether we've made some substantial progress. Some of those may help or hurt us in dealing with other departments. We wanted to establish the fact that we have tried to go out to the site, we have tried to begin doing the construction. Some of the things that we've hit have been unanticipated and we're dealing with and working our way through boards, but that related to the idea of whether we've commenced work within the 2 years. And that was the purpose of those photographs.
Okay. Is it fair to say, is it Nate?
Yeah.
Yes, Nate.
The photos of the timber mats, is that more or less where the road is going to be built for the extension of Cushing?
Yes, yeah, more or less. If you see on the plans that, that gravel access road almost makes a perpendicular intersection with the cul-de-sac. So that's roughly where the timber mats are. I can't confirm it exactly, without, survey comparisons, but, based off site visits, it does appear to line up.
Oh, okay, I wasn't reading below, so the timber mats, that's the right-hand angle, 90 degrees heading
Yes.
up, okay.
Heading up to the Woodbridge site, yeah.
One other practical question, I guess, do you intend to have a vote on anything on these issues tonight? And if not, with this discussion, has the town accepted the Mullins rule so that Mark would be able to take a look at
We
the
took care
video?
of that last year.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Yes.
Not, I don't want it to drop, but I want him to be in the loop, and I didn't want to mess anything up, so, thank you.
That's a good question, yes.
Have you done a Conservation Commission filing with this project?
Yes.
You have. Have you received an order of conditions yet?
We have an order of conditions that aligns with the plan of record. Since that time, on this one particular site, there's been a view from Mr. Hannon that he thinks that was erroneously issued by a prior Conservation Commission agent. And that was something that I believe, and I had never met Mr. White before, he was describing the ditch that divided two parts of his parcel, and I think he was confusing the prior meeting with this issue, which is, there's now a question about whether the interpretation that was previously made by the Conservation Commission, that a man-made alteration that was done with farming was an artificial wetland that would be exempt from what would otherwise look like it's a wetland, a man-made pond on the property that could be filled in because it wasn't natural. I'm not an expert at all, but that's, so the answer to your narrow questions, as the Concom, yes, we have a Concom approved plan that aligns with the plan that was approved by this planning board.
And now your construction activities, you've given us pictures of some things that have been started. Are you still ongoing with those construction activities?
No, because Mr. Hannon had asked us to stop, and Mr. Babola, we're working well with Mr. Babola as well. As recently as last Friday, we were in a meeting with your chairman, with Mr. Babola, and with Mr. Hannon and the town administrator to see what your concerns were so that we could address as many of them as possible. So we're trying to be respectful and one of the things that's gone on is we were told, get this schedule, which we've now provided to you and which was previously provided. And then there was at least one occasion where somebody went out on schedule but didn't give a heads up to the town, and we had promised we would give notice to the town. So rightfully they were disappointed in us, and we've assured them that that wouldn't happen again. But no one was there working today because we've been told not to.
You've been told to stop. Okay.
Is that a fair assessment to the folks on the next AMP call to make sure
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Thanks, Kevin.
On this,
So,
yeah, I mean, to go along with what's happened on some of these other projects, is there any question about whether you have the right to improve or create access to this parcel via, I'll call, for lack of a better term, I'll call it the extension of Cushing Lane or road?
and there's a separate memo that should be in your file that was filed yesterday with the town. And again, it went to Mr. LaFrancois, it went to Andy Babola, and I think it was resent to some other folks in town hall today. Number one, you accurately described it to the prior group. We're not here to be land court judges, we're here to be, or superior court judges, we're here to rule this. There is an issue that one neighbor has indicated that they have concerns about it and they believe there may not be rights. And we have a title insurance company that has written a title policy saying that we do have rights. We have a lawyer's letter from one of the smart lawyers up in Boston, smarter than I, but I read it and it makes a lot of sense to me on why we have easement by implication, why we have easement by prescription, why they issued a title policy, etc. But with that said,
Thank you, by the way. That goes to what I was saying before. These access right questions are generally complicated and convoluted and difficult to figure out for the layman of us out here.
no, and so at the end.
Thank you for being upfront with that
That's okay.
part of the issue.
So at the end of the day, as the board might recall, because, you know, if this were the first time we showed up and people were questioning it and you wanted to say, I'm gonna kick it to town council and we don't wanna issue something, potentially you could, you know, that's one avenue. But once a permit has been issued and now that there's a dispute, they have every right, whoever it is that believes we don't have a right on Cushing Lane, to take us to court to get an injunction to stop us. And we're not discouraging them if they believe strongly in that. We would much rather work with them. Some of their concerns, my understanding, are very real and we're working on. Some dust was coming off of one of the projects, which is why we stopped. So we're talking about getting a rumble strip and getting water and doing the practical things to be better neighbors. So we're trying to address that. The legal issue is a totally different thing. That's something we both could spend a lot of money fighting about, and I hope that that's not the way it goes. But being a good neighbor, we're committed to, and there are some practical things that we were talking to Mr. Babola about, and we were talking to Mr. LaFrancois about, and we're committed to doing those things.
Fair enough.
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
What is it, what would you be looking for us, best case scenario tonight?
That's a good question.
Because I know it's,
I think
you're dealing with multiple,
right.
this one in particular, you got a Concom issue.
Right, so we don't expect that we're gonna get a building permit on Cushing Solar until we resolve that issue.
Okay.
The other three, we have either had a building permit and then got a cease and desist order, or they're holding up a building permit to make sure that you're happy with the plan, that things like the fire chief, things like the compaction, things like the plantings, because you've mentioned some concerns about the plantings, that we've addressed them and that those minor modifications to your satisfaction have been addressed for planning board purposes. Again, I'm not saying Concom purposes. So we were hoping that there would be an endorsement, basically a vote of some sort, whether it be tonight or at the next meeting when the chairman is back, that basically said, these minor modifications address our concerns on a practical level for planning board purposes only, and we reaffirm the decision that we made to issue that plan as it was with these minor modifications. That's all we were looking for, to make sure that you were in agreement with us that A, they're minor, B, you're content with them, so that Andy would be able to move forward, at least to know you're satisfied.
Well, I'll go on record and say I did review all of the revised plans, and I'll rehash it that all of them had to have the fire access road cross-section fixed to match the other road, and they did that on every plan. They all had to have a construction sequence put on the detail sheet. They did that on every plan. And then each of these had a different third quirkiness thing to it, if you will. Let me see, Robinson Road was simply more screening. And they did
Robinson,
that.
yeah.
They did that. So I'll put that aside. 1052,
Yeah, let's just keep it to this one at this
Okay.
point, because they are all a little different.
so the Cushing, what was the,
So Cushing.
what was the third
was-
one? I can't, I'm stuck on it.
So Cushing special one was, you'll see it in construction sequence note number 6. It was,
The road?
contractor shall construct and pave the cul-de-sac and
Yes.
portions of Cushing Lane before any electrical work, prior to construction and paving.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So that
Yeah, that is in
was,
there,
that was
yes.
Cushing special one, yep.
So, I mean, I understand you might have conservation issues, but I'm okay with, I'm only one member, but saying tonight that I'm okay with the plans from a planning board perspective. Of course, if things change drastically due to conservation issues, then obviously I'd want to reverse my opinion and take a look at the plan.
You got conservation and you still got some legal issues with the road as well.
Yeah, and then that's something that if it's gotta go to court, then it's gotta go to court, that's
Right.
all. I mean, I'm not, like I said before, I'm not in a position where I'm going to tell anybody they can't access their property. I don't have that right to do that. And I don't think the town should get in the middle of that kind of a
So
battle.
we're just basically looking, these are just satisfied our request. Have been satisfied.
Yeah,
That's really what this is about, from the last meeting we
Okay,
had.
like 10:50 now, we have a train.
Well,
Let's say on this one.
Chairman says he's
Yeah,
right.
I really wanted.
We're gonna get confused ourselves.
I can barely keep one thought alive at the same time. Forget about 4 or 5 different ones. This one is not quite so much of an issue because of the undevelopment, if you will, of the properties around it. But and I'm gonna break my own rule, on the Robinson Road one, where it does say selective clearing, what I saw done out there is clear cutting and leveling of everything in the selective area clearing portion. If it truly is going to end up being, we're just going to take everything out of there, then I think we need to, as a board, revisit the screening thing on all of these projects. But this one, again, I'm not so concerned about, but that wording is an issue. And where we've had one plan on Robinson Road that said selective clearing, which in my mind says some of the stuff is supposed to stay, and then everything's just blasted off the face of the earth in that location. I now have more of a concern, and that's probably going to translate more into when we get to Robinson Road than this one. But it is still an issue. Truly, what does selective clearing mean? And I know there's certainly, it must mean something different to me than it did to the people that put the plans together, because clear cutting and taking all the vegetation off, I didn't go all the way back there, but it didn't look like there was anything left that was much more than a foot high or so, if that. I would like a little verbal clarification on this one, and then expect that conversation to go a little more in depth when we get to the Robinson Road site.
And I think there are a couple of things, I think. One is that some of the clearing, and I'm not gonna tell you that I've been out on the site to see exactly what you believe might happen, what I might believe what happened, and what actually happened. Some of that is gonna have to be controlled by someone like Andy Babola and by the people who work on the staff and say, this is too much or this isn't too much. To address the issues though, in particular for this one and for Robinson Road. On Robinson Road, you wanted screening now on 3 separate sides. That's been added. So when we get to Robinson Road, you'll see that. So the point is, you've raised the issue to try to protect the neighbors. We've heard you, and Nate has written it down. And in fact, I think even Dave talked about what type of plantings would make the most sense and what the height would be of the type. Again, I can barely dig a hole to put in a plant. I have no idea what the names of the plants are. But the smart guys who are the landscapers and Nate have tried to address it, and that's specifically on Robinson when we get there. And here, there are some changes to the plantings as well, and upgrades.
on this plan?
I believe so. Is that correct, Nate?
This one didn't require.
So, Cushing, no, there was no requested changes
Like you
to
said,
planting on this plan.
surrounded by
Just-
It's surrounded by woods and wetlands, so.
All right, yeah, but when it said, you said sheet C400 plant schedule updated to include maximum on-center spacing?
Yeah, so the board's request was that the plant schedule show on-center spacing for the plantings and also mature height of the plantings. So that's the schedule.
They didn't add the plans, they just clarified them, I guess, on this, but I knew the word planting was addressed in the plan. It's on sheet C400.
Yeah, I didn't see anything.
Fire access.
Is there a plant schedule anywhere on any?
This is Cushing Lane, so it really wasn't a
Yeah.
whole.
Sheet C400 at the top of the sheet, kind of next to the culvert crossing inset. Yeah, between the north arrow.
I mean, and this one too, the limit of clearing shown here, I mean, it's not that big. It's not like Robinson Road. It is a little bit different.
Yeah, the site's completely different.
So, Nate, C500?
C400.
Fire access road, cross section?
Yes,
here.
so
Yes.
C500, you can see
These two.
on this sheet, the details are nicely stacked right on top of each other. You can see that the profiles match exactly, 4 inches dense crushed stone, over 12 inches
right?
processed gravel.
Yeah.
So those mirror each other.
Civils is required, 12 inches of processed gravel. 12 inches, so basically they made a match.
Yeah.
So everything's the same, but there's no willy-nilly with the fire access.
I thought that one.
I mean, just basically cut and pasted every detail into every sheet,
Mhm.
every project, so it's, I looked at
Do you
all.
think that's substantial enough? I thought that one started off originally at 18 inches. I don't know why.
No,
Was it this one or was it one of the other
six.
ones?
6 inch?
No, the original access road that was paved out, for some reason.
Oh, the pave might be more,
The main, yeah, coming around it. When it came down this side over here, I don't have the other plans, but I thought this is where it came to question. This was thicker by
Yes.
quite a bit, you know what I mean? I think this, I thought this
Yes,
was
then all the way
original.
around it was less.
Right, but I thought this, for some reason, I thought this was built up to 18, whatever is gonna work. I mean, they own removing the unsuitables before they put that stuff down, so.
Correct.
And that's ultimately.
You're moving suitables, you put in
Yep.
gravel, and then you put your
Yeah.
dense grade 12 inches of your road binding gravel, and then it's 4 inches of dense grade on top, so you're really at 16 inches.
Yep. Yep. Okay. So I think this one's good.
Okay.
Well, we got here, I don't think this was up.
So now what are we looking for?
But you don't wanna, you wanna leave it open, you wanna
I,
just,
I think at this stage, just in case we are fortunate enough to be successful with the Concom, not to have to come back to you. My request would be to say that we accept these as minor modifications that satisfy our concerns, and we reaffirm the special permit that was previously issued. Basically, just say something to that effect, without signing anything new, but just letting us know that we can report back to Andy Babola that for this particular project, you're content with this plan of May 1st.
okay.
Yeah,
so
I think we're all set on that.
I'll state on the record that I'd be more than willing to endorse an approval of this plan, subject to conservation, with all the changes made as requested.
Okay, I'll take that as a motion, a second.
I don't know if we want a motion.
Yeah, we can, I don't see why, I mean, we've got this plan in front of us. They've done things that we've asked them to do. I don't see why we can't just accept this as a minor modification. If they've got to make other changes, well then, they've got to come back and make other changes.
Okay. You okay with it?
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Okay, then I'll make a motion to accept the revised plan as a minor modification of the original special permit.
Okay, second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. Super. That said, you are certainly aware at this point of the geology in this part of town, that we've got areas that have been farmed for decades, and have a substantial amount of loam on them. And that really is a lot of the erosion control that's gone on to this date. Once you get underneath that loam, that soil is dense as all get out. And it is fine material. And it is highly erosive. My request would be that you continue to work with the building inspector and the Conservation Commission to minimize as much as humanly possible effects of erosion and stormwater runoff to the adjacent properties. That's just a request.
Nope, that is so
from me
noted.
personally.
It's so noted from you, and it's consistent with what our conversation with Mr. Bowler have been and with Mr. Hannon.
And we're just going to have these problems again and again and again, because all three of the projects in this part of the world are like that. The underlying soil is fine and dense as all get out. And if you strip the vegetation away, and you strip the trees away, and you strip the loam away, it's going to be almost impossible to control, because there's no infiltration. Unless you want to build a basin down at the bottom with some kind of minimal outlet that can take the whole runoff from the entire storm, there are going to continue to be problems on every one of these sites in these areas of Acushnet. I mean, those hills where 1050 Main Street is, next to an old-time farm, St. Amand's Farm, that soil is the same there. It's loam on top of stuff that is dense as all get out. 1050 that is that way. Most of the, and then of course 550 Main Street, the same situation. They stripped away the vegetation and the trees, you're down to that fine underlying impermeable soil, and it's a disaster for the neighbors. Please continue to cooperate with the building inspector, the neighbors, and the Conservation Commission.
Understood.
/ stormwater management personnel to minimize these problems as construction proceeds. All right, that's that one. I would.
We can go to, just so that you know, there are only 3 that were filed, because 1050, which you mentioned, I'm just going to set this aside so we don't have to deal with it tonight, is because a neighbor built a stone wall that blocks the natural flow, we have to resolve that issue. We are aware of that. There are 2 ways it can be resolved. One is for us to demand that the neighbor remove what she shouldn't have put there, which caused problems for the neighbor across the street as well, as you might be aware. Or for us to work with the DPW to find out if there's an ability for us to take our stormwater that backs up because of her stone wall, redirect it into the layout of the public way and move it past that property. But there are technical issues, there are expense issues, there are logistical issues that may or may not make that possible. We'd rather not sue neighbors, because that's not the way we want to start doing things, but obviously she did do the right thing when she did what she did, so sometimes things come back to you.
When we get to that one, I want to add that irregardless of your issues with previous constructions, it certainly is on our plate to not do anything that makes the situation worse.
Understood.
I mean, it's been a long-standing problem in town for decades. But what you do with that entry road shouldn't be making the project worse.
Understood.
And I'll just say it very briefly, and we'll get off of it because we're not dealing with that right now. Unfortunately, peeling that 1 to 1.5 foot of loam off of the underlying dense erosion-prone soil removes a lot of the storage capacity for stormwater that land had. That's gone now, especially with the construction that's out there at this time. I don't know how you're going to deal with that part, because that's a problem on my personal end, is I do not intend to be part and parcel of anything that makes an existing situation worse. and that's a different thing from solving the problem completely.
Yeah. I understand.
That's,
That makes
and
sense.
I'll shut up. And
Okay.
now, so 10:50. What's that?
Gonna go into the next one.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
I knew this would be. I wasn't sure we could get through everything tonight. I mean, this is a little.
Score and I just see if we get into the next one anyway.
Okay, all right, so that's A. So then we have Robinson Road. That's the next one on the list. Again, Robinson Road and 1052 are all generally in the same place. Okay.
So I can turn it over to Nate, but basically, Mr. DeVignan expressed that some of these things are similar, that are cut and paste in. Number one is the construction sequence schedule is now been incorporated into this document. Number two, the fire access lane and the depth and the compaction was addressed with this. And then the primary odd item for Robinson Road was additional plantings, which if you look at sheet C300, is the one that shows them along the northern, western, and southern property line. So,
Yep, I see him, I see him.
but I'll let Nate speak to it in more detail if you have questions.
Quantity, sizes, heights. I mean, and we do understand, I don't want to speak for the rest of the board. Unfortunately, with plantings, the effectiveness of them is not going to be known for some years. As plants mature and as underlying brush grows, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I mean, I understand that. I appreciate the effort, and I certainly appreciate the density of the plantings along one of the neighbor's properties. We're closer. What are your intentions in terms of the maintenance of this area and also ensuring that the plantings stay alive? We had a couple of projects on Wing Lane where we've got 2-foot berms with some small plants every 25, 30 feet or so that are 2 to 3 feet high and dead. So we certainly, what are the intentions once you get through with your selective clearing on, especially that back piece where you can see houses now and you couldn't before? It's better.
So they're going in this stuff, they're going at 6 or 7.
Yeah, so we, this is Kevin Fanning, Construction Program Manager at Nexamp here. Yeah, so we, generally with the plantings and, and the installation, obviously we'll maintain them, throughout the construction phase. And obviously with us, we actually, we own and operate our sites here for 20, 25 years. So we have our own O&M team, we're not just developing these projects for, a third party, right? We have really long-term plan here to really be good neighbors to everybody. So again, we have our own O&M team that are, out there a couple times a year, if not more, maintaining the site, vegetation control, vegetation management, and that, that includes, any improvements, any, replacements to any screenings on any sites.
I mean, the first 3 years on all of these plantings are critical. If they don't receive adequate water, the plantings are just going to die off. The root systems aren't established yet. That's going to be an interesting one for us on our next plan approval. Is most likely we will be requiring some kind of performance guarantee to ensure that the plantings are replaced if they die, or some kind of guarantee that in 5 years they're all going to be healthy, wealthy, and well on their way to screening the properties off. That's the next time.
Spruce. No diameter, but they do have a height. Most of the stuff there is 5 and 6 feet, 7 feet stuff on the new stuff that they're putting in. So they've already got some significant growth too. They're 5 and he's got 6, 7 foot tall, 5 to 6 foot, 6 to 7 foot. Your giants, so this stuff is fairly mature.
Yep.
That's going in.
Just keep them watered, and I guess
Yeah.
we have any other comments. We don't have this is access directly off of Robinson Road, a public way. And part of it Cushing Lane.
Yeah.
I don't know. Is that public all the way down to the where your second entrance is?
Yeah, that's probably
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. The access issues are done. You've done some things to enhance the screening.
Yep.
Any other issues from the board members?
They've addressed all the issues that we
Yeah.
had.
I think that's really it.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to accept the amended plan as a minor modification of the original special permit.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. That's that one.
The last one, the Celtics are ahead 18-5, just so you know.
Only the fourth quarter matters nowadays. You waste your time watching the first half.
All right. 10:52. Yeah, this one was really out there in the middle of nowhere, as I recall.
And I think this one just wanted the
Okay.
plantings. The special thing on this one was, I think, the plantings on the eastern edge of the property line was something.
Which was screening
Mr. Kudos.
Cruzo's property.
We got this guy. There is a section of Cushing Lane that's going to be extended into the private area of Cushing Lane. We are assuming that you have the rights to do that.
Correct.
And if you don't, then you've got to deal with that with the neighbors and/or land court.
Correct. We understand this one is aligned with the Cushing Lane issue.
Yeah.
They both have to access it through the same road.
Yeah.
And then I think my understanding from you all is that the desire is that the road, if we have the right and we are going to do the work on it, it's built out the way you had wanted it to be originally built out. So we recognize that, and then we also recognize that if somebody challenges our right to do that work, it's our responsibility to deal with that.
Okay.
So we've got the sequence written in there.
What's that?
We've got the sequence that I just wanted to just
All right, let's
Okay.
make sure we've got that sequencing
We
note.
had the sequencing notes in there.
Access and utility easement. I don't remember that. I remember the first time. All right, we've got the construction sequence and the construction sequence notes.
Fire access would be on the last one.
And we do have, we've had a little more verbiage about selective clearing, which is more what I would have expected on Robinson Road, but we're done with that one.
Yeah, we're done.
All right. So your intention is to really just concentrate on the bigger trees that are providing shading and leave as much of the rest of the stuff as possible. Is that what selective clearing means on this plan?
Kevin, if you could address that, please. Or if Kevin is watching the Celtics game, we could get.
He's back. He ain't getting back on. He's still listening. He's just hiding.
Yeah, I can't watch tonight. If they win, I'll watch it next time. With the selective clearing, I'm sorry, I don't have a copy of the drawings in front of me at the moment, but I'm assuming that's the perimeter, around the perimeter of the array?
Yeah, we're on the, is there a north arrow here?
It's on the Woodbridge site, 1052 Main Street, and they wanted to confirm that when you went around on the edges, you would take away the big trees that would be problematic, but that you would be conscious that if there are trees that do not block the array, you would try to leave some of them there so you don't leave it bare for the neighbor. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, it is.
Correct, and I would actually even go one step further there and offer, you know, if anybody with the town would like to go out during, you know, prior to clearing activities, we can have somebody walk the site with whomever and flag, you know, specific trees to make sure we're in alignment there before we do that.
I think that would be marvelous, actually.
So,
I mean, it is it's not a science, and sometimes things have got to be removed just to get access to other plants that do need some removal. But if you're making the commitment to go out with the building inspector and/or Pat Hannon and flag the trees that absolutely need to be removed, that would be marvelous.
Could I get,
Yeah.
What?
And again, right now, obviously, I don't have the set of drawings in front of me, but yeah, I would imagine, you know, would be, you know, the perimeter selective clearing and, you know, as long as, you know, I mean, the major thing from our perspective, obviously, is any shading on the array. That's really the only item we would be looking for. So, you know, it would be, I would imagine, you know, significantly tall trees that would affect that that clearing. But yeah, you know, we can set something up when the time comes and walk the site with whomever from the town. Happy to do that.
Okay.
I just like to, Andy, question for you. Is there a permit issued for this particular one, or this is predicating the issue of the permit?
This is actually part of the approval process.
Okay. Do you have any comment on this? This is 1052. 1052?
1052.
Yep, which is off of Cushing Lane.
So there is still the issue of access that needs to be explored to make sure they're 100% correct and that they have access to it. The one thing that I would like to say to all parties tonight is not only your level of concern as the planning board and you, Mr. Chairman, and board members, but the willingness of the parties to make these projects work. And I applaud the effort to the attention of detail and the responsiveness from the parties that are involved in this. So, you know, I give you my pledge that I will do what I can to make this work for the town and those involved.
Thank you.
I have a question.
You got one.
Nate, I know you don't have the plans in front of you, but I'm sure you remember this easement for the selective clearing. It says, and I didn't notice this before, limits of solar easement provided by SciTech. SciTech Engineering is given an easement? That doesn't make any sense to me. What does that mean?
So those limits were the ones that were depicted on the easement plan prepared by SciTech during the permitting process. So just to say, like, you know, this line work was taken from those.
Okay. So
Yeah.
is there, that's 1050 Main Street, is that right?
this one, what we're talking now is
This
1052.
is 1052.
1050 is the drainage issue on the
Right,
road.
but this selective clearing easement appears to be on 1050 Main Street, is that correct? Or am I misreading the plans?
Well, it's confusing because 1052, this isn't even close to Main Street, even though that's the address. I mean, there's this,
So what property is the easement on?
So yes, you are correct. So there is that dark property line first zone easement that extends beyond the property line for that zone selective clearing, which are labeled in those three different sections.
So has that document been conveyed from 1050 to 1052 for this to actually occur? I think you froze up on us.
oh,
Yep.
technical issue.
I don't know that answer, so I can get you that answer. But
Oh.
Everybody's.
Yeah, we
on.
lost everybody.
Oh, we're back. Yeah, the whole thing disappeared, and froze and then disappeared.
It's a new one.
There we go.
Nate, are you back with us?
I'm here. Can you guys hear me, see me?
Yeah, we can't, yeah, but I think the question that was pending that you began to answer that we did not hear was, is the easement that you have between 1050 and 1052, has that been ever perfected and recorded, to your knowledge?
Yes, so that's actually sheet number 4 of the plan set. It's labeled the Alta NSPS land title survey plan by SciTech. That shows, you can see the property line and the solar field beyond the property line.
So, is that a recorded easement from the abutting property, Raymond and Simone Boulia to this property owner?
That's Main Street, so, I mean, there's all this that's not even part of their proposal.
Right.
The match line's here, and there's some wetland over here, so I mean, they're really adjacent to Cushing Lane.
But my point is,
Yeah,
But the
these,
question is,
yeah.
was that ever?
It's a narrow question, Nate, if you know. If not, I can look it up and talk with Steve Giosa in his retirement down at Margaritaville or wherever he is. But do you know whether the actual easement, legal grant of easement, has been executed and recorded?
No.
Andy, if you could keep that as a notation, otherwise they could be going 100 feet on somebody's property and clear cutting selectively because it's shown on a plan, but it's not recorded. It's got to be granted.
And it could have been granted. I'm not saying it
Could have
hasn't been. I just have to check it
We want
out.
to make sure that that instrument is recorded at the registry.
I understand, Mr. DeVignan. That's kind of what I was alluding to from the standpoint of the access being 100% correct. And I'm sure as time goes on, this matter will get rectified.
We'll address it. I mean, I'll get an answer for you, if not tomorrow, then next week.
Fair enough. Fair enough. We've probably got hopefully we've got our same construction notes. Okay, so we've got our construction sequence.
Yep.
Along with the sequence notes.
Buffers in, right?
I don't think we really had any other issues on this one.
Other than the buffers.
Was the
right?
screening that we were gonna do up the end here.
Yep.
To, for this property.
Yeah.
It's shown on the sheet. Sorry.
And, I mean, same caveat, you're most likely dealing with some very dense underlying soil that's going to be difficult to control runoff and sediment. Just keep that in mind when you open the site up. It would have been nicer if the 1050 site hadn't been so difficult, but unfortunately, that's now set a precedent for the rest of your projects.
Understood.
Ready for a motion?
Yeah?
I'll make a motion to accept the amended plan as a minor modification of the original special permit.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So
All in favor?
I'll have the privilege of seeing you all again at 10:50 when we get that figured out, but I really appreciate this, and I know that it's been difficult for the town to figure all this out. It's been difficult for us, but we're trying to get there. So thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
All righty, guys. Thanks for bearing with us.
35:20, end of the first.
Good number.
No,
They need to be up 50 for me.
no current planning, no long-range planning, no other business. Next meeting, June 8th. Any other business? Andy, we appreciate your time on this. And by all means, even outside of these meetings, if you've got any issue that the planning board can help you out with, talk to Mark, talk to the town administrator, get back to us somehow, and we will try not to step on your toes in your enforcement efforts on these solar projects.
I appreciate that, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all the board members as well. Appreciate your time and effort.
Thank you, man.
Thank you.
Great.
All right, good night.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Aye. Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.